Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Diesel Dampers Service and Installation from Performance to Heavy Duty. I'm Amanda Goyette. I'm an admin assistant with AERA, and I will be helping moderate today's event with my colleague, Rob Monroe.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, Rob Monroe here. I look after membership and technical development at AERA, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar with both Nick and Brian. So for those of you that have been to an AERA Tech and Skills Conference before, you know just how great these events are. There's technical presentations, there's lunch, there's usually a tour of the facility, and our next one is going to be on August 23rd out in Rogersville, Missouri. It's at P1 Manufacturing. This is a first-class facility, so you're not going to want to miss this one. And if you head over to our website at www.aera.org, you can begin to register and get more information for that one. So we're just setting the technical presentation lineup here now, so we'll have that up on our website in the next day or so, and I look forward to seeing everybody there for that one. Also, we've set the schedule for our second Engine Professional Industry Conference. So EPIC is what we call it, and that's going to be Wednesday, December 11th. That is the day before the PRI show starts out in Indianapolis. And so if you're making plans to go to Indianapolis for PRI this year, make sure to come a day early and attend the EPIC conference. This is a highly technical conference. We bring the best of the best in for presenters for this one, and really give you the highly technical information that you need. And it's going to be, again, engine related. So keep an eye out for the registration. That's going to be coming soon for that one. So we look forward to seeing everybody out there at PRI for the EPIC conference. Today's presentation is going to be great. We've dealt with both Nick Orefice and Brian LeBarron before at Fluid Damper and Vibertech, and these two gentlemen are definitely really smart when it comes to what you need to know for dampers. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and kind of get things going. So guys, how you doing today?
Wonderful, Rob. Thank you for having us on today. I'm Brian LeBarron, representing Vibertech TBD.
I'm Nick Orefice, and I'll be representing Fluid Damper.
Great. And as Rob had mentioned, we're going for a lot of information today dealing with a diesel damper specifically, both performance up to heavy duty. Vibertech TBD taking the heavy duty side, with Fluid Damper taking the performance and light duty side. Just a little bit of a starter here to answer the question, why do we even have harmonic dampers? Well, it's to control crankshaft torsional vibration. When we talk about torsional vibration in a crankshaft, it's the end-to-end twisting and rebounding of the crank caused by combustion. And in a diesel engine, we have a lot of combustion force. So with a good quality damper on it, you build in durability. So you reduce the risk of crankshaft failure, and you reduce the risk of wear and other critical engine components. A good quality damper will also build an efficiency that frees up torque and horsepower. So you're making the engine last longer, you're running more efficient, and that's the summary of why we have harmonic dampers. The two companies, Vibertech TBD and Fluid Damper, has been around since the mid-40s with Vibertech, primarily on the OEM and heavy-duty side. Vibertech covers a really wide range of industries, everything from over-the-road trucks to marine to ag to construction and mining. Fluid Damper came out in the mid-80s. At the request of the engine builders in the racing industry, they were looking to bring the durability of a viscous damper to racing, and that's where Fluid Damper took off from there. Now, as far as the two companies combined, we have a lot of capabilities right behind us in our facility dealing with powertrain torsional vibration analysis. We do our own damper development and manufacturing right here in Springville, New York. We privileged and honored to be serving 27 OEM accounts, everything from heavy duty through automotive OE. 16 of them are active with year-to-date shipments. And if you're familiar with Fluid Damper, you know they're available at quality jobber shops, parts retailers, and through distribution. We partner up with great organizations such as AERA or PRI business member. We're on the SEMA NPMC Council, and of course members of SEMA. So this is a summary of the companies themselves. I personally have been with them for over 10 years, do a lot of the content development. So the tips and tricks we're going to be getting into, they come from a long line of experience working with the engineers, working with the field techs, working with the trade schools to bring forth these recommendations. And Nick, I'll give you a moment here to introduce yourself. And
I'm Nick. I've been with the company for over 6 years, come from a background in heavy duty diesel. I was a mechanic doing that for over 15 years. Found the company to be in my backyard, and I've installed both product lines for years. I was well aware of the product and how they work, and came on board, and I had to share my experience and knowledge with others. Vibration, torsional vibration, every engine has it, so harmonic damper is super important, and that's really it. We can roll right into it.
well, we want to hear from the audience, and we want to get a little bit of feedback from you. What type of diesel engines are you working on in your shops? Amanda has a poll question for us. Turn it back to her, and we'll get the poll underway.
All right, thanks guys. So we're just going to give you all a minute here. Go ahead and let us know. Are you working on light duty in your shop, heavy duty, a little of both? Select whatever it is you're working on, and we'll just give everyone a moment to take a look and answer those questions. And then we'll take a look at our results and keep on moving. And it looks like about a third of you have answered so far, so we'll just give it a little bit longer, and then we will close it up here, so we're not holding things up for too long. Let's close that out, and we'll share the results. So it looks like about 75% of you are working on the light duty stuff and 50% are on the heavy duty. So thanks everyone for taking a moment to fill that out for us, and I'll turn things back over to Nick and Brian.
Thank you very much for that.
Thanks for the feedback. That's great to know, and we can tweak it a little bit how we bring forth the recommendations. When we look at fluid damper and VibraTech over the last 10 years, heavy duty side has stayed relatively stable as far as the number of shipments going out, but we've seen really tremendous growth in the performance diesel side. So knowing that 75% of the audience is in performance diesel and light duty, this is going to be great. Yeah, last 10 years, 185% category growth. Right now, 40% of the dampers shipping out for fluid damper go to the performance diesel market. And this next one is the one that surprises me the most. The 5.9 Cummins dampers are outselling Chevy small block plus LS1 combined 2-to-1.
Yeah, which we found about 5 years ago. The small block Chevy and a 5.9 Cummins. The Cummins was actually outselling it right there. Now it's actually the Cummins or the small block and the LS.
Yeah. So we see that a lot out of the racing events too. The 5.9 Cummins hugely popular.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to kind of take a quick look at what you'll find with harmonic dampers out in the field. What's coming OE? A lot on the light duty side, they're going to be elastomer type dampers where you have a center hub, a bonded elastomer ring, and the inertial ring bonded to the outside. You'll find that with Duramax, with Power Stroke, with the 5.9 Cummins. And then you'll also find viscous dampers now coming OE on the light duty side. Viscous dominantly, just all of them on heavy duty, where you have an internal inertial ring and then a really thin layer of silicone, and now it's all encased in a housing. Cummins on the 6.7 went to a viscous damper from the factory. One thing to note for that, the stock 6.7 Cummins damper is not intended for competition, and we're going to get into that in a little bit.
And both in heavy duty side did come with elastomer dampers as well. A lot of the older ones, a lot of ag ones, so marine ones, which those see a lot more abuse and a punishment. So viscous damper being obviously a better choice, but they were used. Some elastomer style were used in the heavy duty as well.
Right. So with the fluid damper for performance diesel dampers, they're a premium viscous type damper. They're going to be constructed to tighter tolerances, higher quality graded silicone, and most importantly, they're meant for high horsepower applications. They don't wear out like a stock viscous damper would. We do make those for the Power Strokes, for the Cummins and Duramax lines. What's great about that is there's no maintenance or tuning required with a viscous damper because it's always working in real time with the engine. It also lasts the life of the engine in a light-duty diesel application, and it's built to SFI 18.1 spec for competition use. Going up one more level from that, we have the competition series of performance diesel dampers, and those are going to be much heavier. They're going to have more damping inertia built into them and more robust housing. What you don't typically find with those is an accessory drive pulley. We find these a lot in the propulling side, on the propulling trucks and tractors.
And one thing to note is all of our dampers are able to be used in competition, racing, and any of those. These ones specifically just don't have a belt drive, so that's why they're considered like competition only, because you wouldn't be riding around on the street with one of these dampers.
And with the VibraTech heavy duty, the replacement dampers, they are premium quality. We'd say we do OE supply to some manufacturers. Others we supply the aftermarket with replacement dampers. They're made on the same lines, the same quality specs. VibraTech TVD is ISO 9001 quality certified. We're running advanced manufacturing here. Everything gets checked thoroughly. So it's a very good quality, made in the USA damper replacement. We do offer those for popular Cummins, Caterpillar, Detroit, Mack, Waukesha, Mitsubishi, General Electric. Like I say, if you're on the heavy duty side and you're dealing with a wide range of diesel engines, it could be anything from, I say, ag and construction to over-the-road truck to marine. Knowing the type of engine that you're working with, good chance we have a viscous damper for that. So that's at the broad overview. Again, the OEM dampers are designed for stock use and stock application. They are a wear item, particularly the elastomer type style dampers. Check the owner's manuals and the maintenance guides. Some have an inspection and replace as early as 30,000 miles before they need to be changed out. The OEM viscous, they're not built for competition. We've seen it out in the field. You got to go with an SFI spec, good quality fluid damper to take the higher horsepower. And then the fluid damper, the competition series, they're designed for the pros, for pro pulling, for truck and for tractor. Again, doesn't have a belt drive on it to run any accessories.
Diesel racing, which is getting huge and bigger every year. They would run the competition series as well, mostly.
So that's what you find out there when you're servicing the engines. We're going to get now into some inspection and service tips. I'm going to turn it over to Nick here, and he'll lend his experience to it.
Okay, so yeah, we'll hop on over. So the elastomer dampers, we actually have one here. I don't know if you're able to see it, but this is a Cummins damper. So as on there on the screen, a lot of times as they start to age, the rubber bonding material will dry rot, crack, start to push out and bulge. And that's a good chance that that's about to separate. And we hear it all the time. The damper ring, the outside ring flies off. Then when that happens, it definitely causes a lot more damage. So you'd be replacing a lot more than just the damper itself. So in a service station or at a dealership or anything, even in your own driveway, it's always good to inspect them and make sure they're good. It's kind of one of those things that's it's often forgotten about. They're not cool shiny turbos, as I always say, but they are extremely important. So inspecting them, make sure that the damper is in good shape. That's I would say a high priority. And if they aren't, it's definitely time to go ahead and replace it. So what can cause some accelerated wear on them? So your damper is built for the stock configuration, stock power, stock everything. There's most people are starting to boost them up. If you change anything, an exhaust, intake, any little thing like that actually changes the natural frequency of the engine, and it will actually change the way that damper's tuned. So the damper will be working overtime trying to compensate for that. So the excess of power, and as you change other things, injectors, turbo, any little changes, you're going to put more power to it. The damper is going to work harder, and you're definitely going to see more wear from that. But also oils, solvents, chemicals, road debris, the salts from the roads if you're in the rust belt, anything like that It's just going to help accelerate that deterioration of the damper itself. And not only that, just the miles and hours on the engine itself. It's a diesel engine is a very violent act as it's running, and it's, you know, you're hammering that damper. So a good inspection on it to make sure that it's in healthy condition is definitely highly recommended. We'll show here our fluid dampers previous to 2017 were built more on the OE construction side of like the thickness of the flange and the bolt holes and different things like that. So through diesel racing, as the progression of that, in conjunction with, I believe it was Fire Pump, we had found that the damper, with just as they were raising the horsepower levels and the torque levels, the damper was starting to come up short. And we always like to overbuild our product so that it's you know, we're ahead of the game. And we had seen some material transfer and a little wallowing of the bolt holes. So things like that led us to go back to the drawing board and work with these other companies to make a better product and get to that point where it's not a problem anymore. It's not a worry. It's nothing you're going to have to be concerned about. So late 2017, we went back to the drawing board and got it handled. So on the revision, and this would be, all of them actually got it, but it actually stemmed from a Common Rail 5.9. But so the flange is now thicker, and then the bolt holes have a tighter tolerance, as well as we did integrate the tone wheel on the 5.9 Common Rail and the 6.7.
Another thing I just want to point out in this slide, when we did the revision, it used to be with the older style 5.9 damper, you'd have to remove the damper to get the belt off, accessory drive belt off.
That is true. That is another good point.
So on the redesign, since 2017, we put that chamfer in the outer housing. You can get that stock belt on and off without having to take the damper off.
Yeah, and it is possible. I have had it on my own truck, and you can use a green Gates belt, just to throw that out. So the heavy duty side, do you want to do some of this, or you want me to keep going? Or
I'll keep going. I'll get into that.
All right. So on the heavy duty dampers, you have much more hours put on them, more mileage. So you're definitely going to get a little more abuse and a lot more abuse and wear. Some things to check on them to see how those are doing is check for a bulge or a raise in the cover. And one of the things that happens is as the silicone is wearing, it actually produces an oxygen, and then that could actually cause the damper to bulge out. Some other things, like, you know, if you hear a rattling in the damper, if your belts are getting slapped or thrown, you know, also check it for dents and damage. I've seen it personally multiple times. Something comes up underneath the truck, whether it's a road gator, or I've had a guy hit a sign, some things like that. You know, you check for damages to the damper. Because of the tight tolerances inside there, if that housing gets dented or beat up at all, you could cause the inertia ring in there to not free float, and that could cause some issues as well. And it could cause, you know, issues with your bearings and other things like that. One of the ways, I don't know, should I talk about the cheap way to check it with the temp gun, or we have a slide?
We have a slide for that.
So, but that's the general gist of this. Inspect it, make sure it's not leaking. But mileage and hours, definitely check that. One of the things to note is the silicone that's inside the dampers is 45,000 times thicker than 30-weight motor oil. So it's very sticky, it's very viscous. So if you see a oil on or around the component and you wipe it and it wipes like an oil, it's not the damper leaking. We get a lot of calls on things like that. Turns out it's like a front seal or something in the area that's leaking. So it wouldn't be the damper. But if it's extremely tacky, sticky, doesn't want to come off, then there's a chance that it is that it's cracked or bulged, and just from excessive wear, and that it would be time to replace that. You want to
Sure.
get the silicone
Sure, we'll take
science?
we'll take a little deep dive into the silicone that's on that. As Nick had just mentioned, it's very thick, it's very tacky, 45,000 times thicker than 30 weight. You got to take a putty knife or a Scotch-Brite and get, to get it off with. And it runs in different viscosity ranges. We say 45,000 times thicker, but it's available from anywhere from 10 centistokes up to 1,000,000. Different silicones that give you different damping properties. But the important thing to note there is that it's thermally stable. It holds its damping properties from -40 up to 300 degrees. So if you're servicing diesel engines up in Alaska, we've got a lot of calls for this. Do I have to worry about my damper? Well, no, you're going to be running an engine, a block heater at that point. That's going to help warm the damper as well too. On the plus side of it, if you're in extreme temperatures, you want to make sure there's good sufficient airflow around the damper to keep it at that 300. We only had one severe use case, and that was in the Australian outback as far as dampers running those kind of temperatures. So again, the type of environment that it's running in, it isn't really much of a concern as far as the silicone itself is. But what does happen is that work hours, particularly on heavy duty, will start shearing and breaking down the silicone itself. We see this at about 500,000 miles in heavy duty applications, so your over the road trucks, about 15,000 hours on construction and ag equipment. We don't see it on the fluid damper side. They're not constantly putting the damper through the abuse that a heavy duty diesel engine would. So when you start getting to about 500,000 miles, this process called polymerization starts to happen. I'm gonna get in front of the camera here with a couple of, here is clear silicone that's in the damper. You can see that. Ball dropping down through there, you can see, very clear. It's a hard time with that ball dropping through. As it wears down, about 500,000 miles, it starts turning this black liquid. The silicone starts breaking apart and it starts releasing the oxygen that's part of the silicone. Eventually, you let it go long enough, the oxygen all separates out, the silicone hardens to these powdery flakes. It's like little eraser type tablets. You get to that point, the damper's not doing anything.
Yeah, and on a heavy duty side, if it does start to get tight like that, the inertia ring inside could actually be off center, and then you would have like counterweight situation, which would be very bad for your crank.
Mm-hmm. So as that starts breaking down, as Nick alluded before, it releases the oxygen. You get this bulge in the cover. So on these heavy duty dampers, if you take a straight edge to it, start measuring different points, if you get 0.02 of an inch gap in that cover, that's a good indication that that heavy duty damper is worn out, and you replace it. Typically we recommend just do it by the hours, do it by the miles. Again, 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours. Because you get to a point where the damper is it's ineffective, and then you start getting into engine efficiency issues. Could run into what's not protecting from torsional vibration. So that's one way to check a heavy duty damper. Another one that's common out in the field, particularly with stationary engines for like gensets, is you can do a temperature check on the damper. Now the damper takes care of vibration by transferring it to heat. It's shearing back and forth within the damper, it converts it to heat. So you can take a temperature reading, get a baseline, and then periodically keep checking it. And if you see a drop in temperature, the damper's not working as efficient.
So one of the things I always tell people when they call in, and I've done this myself, you get the engine up to running operation temperature, and then take your laser temperature gun and take a reading of a bracket in the area, not an engine actual temperature of the engine, but like a bracket or part that's in the area, it's in the ambient air, and then take a reading of the damper itself, and the damper should be running hotter. If the damper is running colder, you have a locked up or not working damper.
So again, just a quick review on those sections for inspection. The OE damper, the elastomer one, check for crack, bulging, or missing rubber. You do not want the outer inertia ring to separate, and it cause a whole lot more damage. It becomes a safety issue in racing. For fluid damper, it makes it an ideal OEM upgrade for performance light duty diesel trucks, just so you don't have to keep inspecting it, or if you're definitely going into the performance racing side of it, you'll need it for the protection. And then on the VibraTech and the heavy duty side, the replacement interval is 500,000 miles, or about 15,000 hours. You can do that by just logging the mileage or the hours in the damper. We talked a little bit about how to check for the bulge in the cover, temperature check, all good inspection tips.
And don't always think that when you get an in-frame or some kind of service done that they are replacing the damper. I know a lot of the kits and places, they don't do that, but there are a few that do, so that's always something to be cognizant of, and ask and say, hey, do your due diligence and make sure that you get the damper replaced. It's your engine and the longevity of that.
So jumping into some installation best practices.
So in development of the performance racing dampers, whether it's diesel racing or pulling or anything like that, we came out with a drill pin kit that is for this one was specifically for the Cummins damper. We do have one for the Duramax that will be released here in the next month or so, very, very soon. You have your guide and read the instructions because it's very specific on how to do it. And then you'll get a drill bit and a reamer, and we include 3 pins with the Cummins damper. You can pin a damper, you can pin 3 dampers with that kit technically. The earlier 5/9, 12 valve, 24 valve, they the dampers have a provision to run 2 pins in them, whereas the common rail and the 6/7 damper, it has an alignment pin and then a drill pin spot. We have had guys that have put all 3 pins in the damper. It's a little overkill. It's not required. We only give spots for 2, but there is 3 pins there, so you could pin 3 engines. And then we will have the Duramax one. It'll be along the same lines as the Cummins setup, but I know it's only going to have 1 pin in that kit, so that will be available soon. Our hardware kits. So we have developed this for the high horsepower. I generally say, no matter what, I always recommend the full power kit. You're in there, you're doing it. You might as well lock it all in and get it all done now. And it's a good time to do a drill pin kit too. If you think you're going to be over 3,500 RPM, that's really when the drill pin kit would be recommended. For the full power kit though, it's a must at 700 horse and above. What you'll get in that kit is you'll get a diamond impregnated friction washer, and that'll go between the crankface and the backside of the damper. And then we have our torque plate that has a 5/8 hex head on there, so you can bar the engine over for valve lash or timing, any of those things. And on the back side of that torque plate, there is a non-concentric finish, so that helps to bite into the front of that damper. So as it's all put together, it really locks that in from moving. And then we supply the ARP bolts, and those are extended length. Those are made specifically for us. So that hardware kit, I recommend it at any power level, really just for the extra benefits of the barring tool and the security of locking it in. And if maybe you're only 300-400 horsepower now, 500 horsepower, but you may or may not go up later. If you get it done right out of the gate, you don't have to worry about it ever again. So in the competition series, this here is actually for pulling. This is a pulling specific damper. So we have 2 versions available. One has the 12 bolt holes and a 4.5-inch bolt circle already in it. And we do have one that has no bolt holes, but it does have the 3¼ inch pilot. But that would require a taper lock hub. We do not make them. We do not supply them. We just sell the damper portion. So if you're in a tractor pulling situation looking for a damper, you would just have to get a hold of an engine builder or tractor pulling parts supplier to get their damper, and then you'd have to ask them what hub pattern they have. And all of our guys, there's a few different patterns out there, and we supply them with that, and they'll just drill in the holes that's needed for that. And then that damper is SFI certified. It is black zinc chromate finished like the rest of our fluid dampers are, and it does have timing marks both way. So it has 360 degrees of timing but it's 180 clockwise and counterclockwise. So just a little review on that, the pin kits, and we will have one for the Duramax. One thing to note on the Duramax damper, a pin kit is, it's a very important piece. One of the things that we typically see with the Duramax dampers, it has just that little nub that comes out of the crank, and that is your alignment for the counterweight. If that nub shears, the damper moves, you're going to be in a lose-lose situation because your counterweight will be off and you're likely going to snap a crank. So it is always recommended to replace the bolts for the damper itself. It's just a single bolt, and we do have a hardware kit for the Duramax bolt, and it does have a friction washer as well. But it is highly recommended to always replace that bolt because of that pin being so small and easy to shear. We do have, like I said, we're going to be coming out with the pin kit that'll be 180 degrees from that to help secure that in and help prevent snapped cranks from that. I would say almost 4 out of 5 snapped cranks is caused by that. That may be a high number, but we do see that awful lot, and generally it's because they reuse the bolt. So it's in the bolt torque to yield bolt, and it stretches, and it's not going to apply the clamping force. So now we're going to the Vibratech heavy duty installation.
So with Vibratech, it's more like just a bolt down replacement. Always recommend that you use new hardware when you do it. But then when you have the damper off, clean the area, inspect the engine cover, the crank seal, the hub. Hey, while you're in there, do a good thorough job. You do want to make sure that you remove any rust and clean the crankshaft hub mounting area. You want a nice flush finish, no debris in there or anything. Again, we say we replace the bolts if needed. A lot of them are going to torque to your bolts on the new dampers, but older ones if you can, but always best practice with use new hardware. One thing to note with the Vibratech ones, they ship unfinished. They just have a rust inhibited finish to them, because a lot of folks like to paint the damper to match whatever engine they're running, be it Cummins red or John Deere green.
Caterpillar yellow.
Caterpillar yellow.
Can't forget the cat guys.
So one thing that we always recommend on this is okay, you can remove the rust preventative, but then mask the bore and mating surface. You don't want any paint on that. You want a nice, good interface between that and the crank hub. And then they use just a high quality automotive primer and paint. Don't want to overpaint it. Let's say 1 or 2 coats would do the trick.
Yeah, what I usually did was I just masked off the bolt pattern area, that countersink part, and then give it a wipe down and then paint it just enough to prevent it from rusting.
A couple of, I guess, common sense best practices. Again, don't drop the damper. If it drops on a concrete floor and you dent it, there's a good chance that you'll lock the inner hub or the inner inertia ring, and it won't be able to move and shear through the silicone like it should. You don't want to use a hammer or a pry bar. We've seen that where it slipped or too much force on a hammer, and then you end up denting the cover. So again, handle it with care. Just take your time, use a little caution. Torque when you get it all bolted on, bolt it to OEM torque specs, and then you want to check the area around the damper for proper clearance and belt alignment. And belt alignment is key, particularly on the larger like stationary gen sets. If it runs not true, if you get it running at an angle, you can get this orbiting vibration. But we've seen it where the inner inertia ring will run slightly, rubbing against the inside of that housing, and it will actually friction lock inside, and then the damper becomes ineffective. So again, make sure everything's good and true, everything's running true.
And I would also add the proper amount of tension for the belts. You don't want to over tension them and cause that.
So again, real quick on the Vibratech side, it does ship with a rust preventative on it. I just wiped that off. When you go to paint it, mask the area that's where the interface is, and then check for the belt alignment. I guess one thing to add on the painting, I say only 1 or 2 coats if you overpaint it, you get too much layer built up. It actually prevents the proper heat dissipation to heat exchange. So you need to keep the damper within that operating range. So again, easy on the paint.
And you could cover in timing marks because there are some that do have timing marks.
Yeah.
So the ISX damper specifically has that.
Another question I guess we get asked a lot too is, hey, can I powder coat a damper, be it a fluid damper or a Vibertech? And we always say no, because when you cook it in the oven, you're going to exceed the 300 degrees, and now you cause damage to the silicone. So just stick with paint. So that wraps up our inspection and service and installation best practices. We're going to fill it back over to Rob and Amanda. Questions coming in, we'll be available to fill those for you.
Super. Thanks, guys. Yeah, great job. Lots of really good information there, especially on the heavy duty side. I mean, it's like I mentioned to you before, on the tech line, we're seeing probably a 60-40 split with heavy duty questions versus automotive questions now. So yeah, it's great that you've addressed that and covered that. So I appreciate it. Thanks for your time. I do have some questions here for you. And the first question I've got is, they noticed on your website that you offer like a rebuilding or refurbishing service. Can you maybe explain what does that apply to?
Did you get it, or do you want it?
Sure, we can both tackle this one. I think the website, yeah, probably referring to is Vibertech TVD.
Yep.
And that is true that the large, like locomotive dampers and the genset type dampers, they're built to be refurbished. For instance, if you're working on locomotive engines, you'll be able to remove the fill plugs, and we can push the used silicone out, inject new in. On the large genset ones, they have a bolt-on cover where we can disassemble the damper, clean it all out, reassemble it with fresh silicone. Those are on rotating services with large service providers or the OEs. When we get down to the over-the-road trucks, what we find is that it's just not cost-effective. For the cost of refurbishing a damper, you can purchase a new one.
So basically anything over 18 inches and bigger, we can rebuild within reason. There are some here and there that cannot be, or if the damper has gone too far, where you're at a fully polymerized silicone, a lot of those times it's just you're not able to do that.
Okay, all right. In your presentation, you were talking about that friction washer, and you mentioned that. So if you do need to remove that friction washer, do you have to replace it again?
Yeah, every time the damper comes off, the friction washer needs to be replaced. And that's because it's diamond encrusted friction washer, so that the diamond material is actually impregnated into the metal, and when you clamp it on, it actually bites into both ends of the damper and the crank, and that material will actually embed into there, so it comes off of the steel disc that it's on.
Okay, perfect. Another question. They noticed at the beginning of your presentation, you showed the regular fluid damper and the competition series fluid damper. When would you know which one to choose?
If it's a performance driver, something that you're on the road driving, then you definitely use the just a standard regular fluid damper. As I said earlier, you can use any of them for competition. The competition series label is just basically there's no belt, so you wouldn't have an alternator or water pump or anything like that spinning with it, so you would need to have a drive added to that. At that point, it would just be better to have a standard fluid damper. So we do get that question a lot, where people are like, oh, well, I need the competition series, or this damper is not for competition. But they all are SFI certified. They all can be used for anything, and that includes gas engines as well. So just the competition series in diesel is basically just does not have a belt provision.
Okay, so then would you be able to use a fluid damper on like an RV or marine application?
Yep, absolutely. We actually did some case studies in the marine application. Brian, you want to talk about that a little?
Sure. Like I say, on the Vibrotech side, we're finding some marine applications because that engine sits in an enclosed hull and the ambient temperature gets high, and it would wear out the elastomer type dampers very prematurely. So what was really great, we were able to develop a viscous type damper that could take the heat and the low airflow and just get that heat dissipation set up right for it. So again, if you're running a marine in an enclosed area, low airflow, the viscous one was definitely holding up better.
Yeah, and then RVs as well. They're not every application, but I know a lot of the Cummins ones we've been able to supply, which oddly enough, it turns out to be the 960-341, which is the competition series no belt provision in both marine and RVs. We've supplied people with those dampers specifically because that's what the part number crosses over to. So depending, that competition series, I guess also could, I didn't think of that, could be used for both in marine and in the RV industry.
Okay. Yep. Really good to know. Another question that's come in, guys, is they're asking if you have an unbalance on a heavy duty motor, will the fluid damper remove the unbalance?
Well, it's not its job. It could. We've seen that. We've heard that it has removed an imbalance, but it's not its actual job. That's one of the things I guess is kind of confusing is the damper and balancer. The name gets interchanged and used both, but a damper is to remove torsional vibration. A balancer actually is for an externally balanced engine, such as a Power Stroke and a Duramax. So it has a counterweight outside of the engine on both sides. So at that point, you'd be correcting your balance outside too. But if you have an imbalance, it's best to get that sorted out. But it could help.
One way of thinking about vibration, because the terms get interchanged a lot. Again, the job of the damper is to remove the end-to-end twisting vibration that's happening. That's torsional vibration. The balance conditions like balancing rotating assembly on a machine, you're taking out that rotational imbalance. The damper itself doesn't address that, only if there's provisions for counterweights on it. So when you get into the heavy duty side, we've seen some aftermarket products that you can bolt on and try to do that balancing with it. I don't really dive into that. I say there's other companies' products.
Yeah, it's not our product. We don't, from coming from the field, some of those things work, some don't. But if it's an imbalance of the engine, it's best to get that sorted out, as we said. But the damper has been known to help that, but that's not like it's still going to be there. That problem will still be there. It's not going to remove that or fix that.
Okay, so to just clarify then, let's say they're doing a balance job, they've got a crankshaft in the machine and they're going to be using a fluid damper. They should really then probably be spinning that crankshaft, like the fluid damper shouldn't be installed because it may take some of that imbalance out of the crankshaft that they're looking for. Is that kind of what you're referring to?
Well, no. So when you're balancing a crankshaft, the balancing machine does not create torsional vibration, so the inertia ring inside of our damper won't center, and you would actually get yourself a false reading, so you'd be kind of chasing an imbalance the whole time. So we do recommend either using the OE damper or a weighted piece, if it just to get your initial balance, and then you can put our damper on, both heavy duty and light duty. You can put our damper on and be good. Our damper has, if it's an externally balanced damper, you're able to remove the damper, so you have just the balancer portion, and then you could, if you had to add or remove some moly or whatever to get your weight balance, you'd be able to do it with just the external part and not the whole damper ring itself. I don't know if that cleared up a little bit.
No, it does. It for sure, because we get that question actually on the tech line a little bit too, as to whether the folks can use your damper while they're balancing wondering if there's a correction or not. So, guys, that's all the questions that we've got, and I want to thank you both. I mean, this was very informative, great information. We'll let everybody get on with their day today. And again, guys, thank you very much for your time. Great job. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having us, Rob. And Amanda, thank you too.
Yes, thank you very much.
We just want to say thank you as always. We know you guys are super busy. We appreciate you taking time out of your day. Means a lot to us. When you go to leave today, there's going to be a survey that pops up. Take a moment, let us know how we're doing. If you have any additional questions for Brian or Nick, there is a spot there to enter those, as well as a spot to enter any questions for the team at AERA. You can also see our contact information is listed there. You can reach anyone on the AERA team by calling 815-526-7600, or you can always just shoot Rob and myself an email. We're happy to answer any questions you have, and if we can't answer them, we will relay them to the appropriate person and make sure we get you an answer. So with that, once again, thank you everyone. We appreciate it, and we hope you have a great afternoon.